And yeah, I mean, I've been going through that a little bit where I come in and I'm like, okay, I'm in the studio. I'm just stressed about getting clients, right? I'm just
Right.
stressed. And so I spend, 6 hours during the day frying my brain, trying to find different avenues and doing all that when I have all this stuff around me to be creating and I'm not doing it.
Hello and welcome to the Studio Takeover podcast. I am your host, Kat Ford Coates. And today I am joined by Josh Beaton. If you are not familiar with Josh's work, well, where have you been? And and if you aren't, I highly encourage you to go and check out the links for his social and website just to dig deep. Josh has this beautiful way of bringing the dark and moody to life in this really elegant fine art style of doing business. Now, Josh, you've been in business for a couple of years now, so I'm really excited to have you on the podcast and really kind of talk through how that's evolved and what's happening in your world.
Well, thank you so much, Kat. Yeah, my world's been sort of flipped upside down a little bit recently because we're going to get into it, and it's been a little rough from a business aspect. I know a lot of times when you're in Facebook groups or just talking to other photographers, a lot of times all you hear are all the success stories and how everybody's selling $12,000 sessions, with product and everything, and everybody's killing it. And that's kind of how I've been feeling lately, is everybody's killing it except for me. Like it just hasn't been clicking. And so as we spoke earlier, I'm going to be going actually back into the workforce, which
Dun, dun,
some people would consider,
dun.
yeah, right. And some people would consider that a failure, I guess, but I don't. And I'm not too bummed about it, because it allows me to have a little bit of a net to, so I have a new studio-ish. I got it almost a year ago. And the weird thing about new studios is you have to pay rent on them.
Oh,
And
God.
I know, right? I didn't think about that coming in. And when you don't get very many paying clients coming in, it's hard to pay that rent. And going back into the workforce will allow me to do is pay that rent and bills and everything else, and then be able to really focus on my business. Like, I have no intention of stopping what I'm doing. Really, nothing's going to change. It's just that I'll have a steady paycheck as well. And like I said, it's probably viewed in the business world as a failure, but I don't consider it. If nothing else, I learned a lot, and this is going to help me take those tools and be able to refine them a little bit.
Well, and give you some breathing room, right?
Yeah.
Like when you start a business, everything comes to the surface, right? And so like when you and I met, you were still working in another career and shooting out of your home, and like you have grown to, have a space outside your home. But at the same time, like the overhead can be really debilitating and put you into a survival state, which causes you to flash sale everything and devalue your work to try and get some revenue in because it has to come, right? But instead, you're actually kind of taking the high road here and saying, you know what? I'm gonna just go ahead and have this period where I and my family and my home and my business are sustained, and take that opportunity to refine your sales process and sort of get disconnected from the, oh my God, we're all gonna die. Right.
Right.
Because that's a tough place to be. And like I don't think that's a failure at all. I think you're doing what's needed to be able to be in business 2 years from now, 5 years from now, instead of burning it to the ground trying to make it work.
Right. And I think also, all of us, I'll speak for everybody here. All of us got into the photography business because we loved photography so much and we wanted to make money from it, right? We wanted that to be our dream career and all of that. And then when you get into it and you find out that, photography is 5 to 10% of it, right? And then the
Mhm.
90% is all the other stuff you have to do. If it's successful, all right, they feed into each other and you can still love photography and everything. When the business part isn't working and now that 90% becomes stress, it really starts to bleed into that 10% that you love, right?
Mhm.
And then it's just like, okay, well now I don't look forward to things anymore because I'm dreading either not having a sale or them not showing up or whatever it ends up being. And it starts to affect your love for photography, and that's something I will never let happen. And if this is going to help me, just stop, take a breather, kind of reset a little bit, maybe even just spend a month not worrying about the business and just shooting creatively and not care, just kind of getting that back, pushing like the reset button on the business a little bit. I think it's totally worth it. And yeah, I mean, I've been going through that a little bit where I come in and I'm like, okay, I'm in the studio. I'm just stressed about getting clients, right? I'm just
Right.
stressed. And so I spend, 6 hours during the day frying my brain, trying to find different avenues and doing all that when I have all this stuff around me to be creating and I'm not doing it.
Mhm.
And it's such, and then you start thinking about that, and then you feel guilty about that, and it's this like it's this cycle that just kind of whatever, the snake biting its own tail type thing, where you never go forward. And it took a lot. I mean, my wife's been involved with that a lot too, just talking to me about going back into the workforce, and I have been fighting it. I have. I'm like,
Sure.
no, because then that means that I've given up, and I don't give up, and all that stuff. So,
Well, and here's the thing. Like, I think that's a really terrific example of one of the ways in which our own heart shows up in our business. She's going, look, this is the logical next step. This will relieve you of all this stress. And you're looking at all of the ways like, no, it means I've failed. And, I'm not going to give up. I'm not a quitter. When really what it is you're spreading out that baseline so you have that security, and that security is what allows you to be able to focus on creative. Because look, when we're in survival mode and fight or flight and oh my god, we're all going to die, you literally cannot be creative because there are so many other things coming at you that you're responsible for, and those responsibilities trump the availability we have in our own energy resources to actually pour love into what we do instead of only just shooting for the cash. That kind of stuff comes up as an entrepreneur, like whether you like it or not, whether we're talking about pricing yourself or making a decision to let's build up some security here so that I can continue to do this.
No, it's because part of this too is, I've got, just like everybody, I've got my dump truck loads of childhood trauma, right?
Sure.
And, I grew up very poor, and you were kind of always fighting for everything, right? You're always sort of struggling. And some people want to move away from that and, are like, okay, I've moved on and, screw my past and all of that. Where I, lucky me, are one of those guys that are very proud of it, right? I'm very proud of where I came from. And I'm very like, yeah, I grew up poor. Yeah. And then so like I'm always, I don't want, I can feel the lecture already, Kat. I can feel it. Okay. But I don't want to walk into a room with a bunch of rich people. Right. Cause I'm like, they can see right through me. Right. Even though I'm past that now. And like, not that I'm rich, but I'm not in the place that I was when I was growing up. And I think that there's a level of comfort that I'm uncomfortable with. Do you know what I mean? Like I can't, if I'm not worried about things or struggling a little bit or having to fight for something, something's wrong, right? I've maybe sold out or whatever the terms are in my head. But it's like I'm proud of just eking by because I did it.
When I was 18, because I did not grow up in a poor space, like upper middle class, family values, the whole nine yards. When I turned 18, I walked away from, my parents and all of the strings that were attached to their support. And I was like, I don't want your money. I'm going to build my own life. Right. And there is some pride to be had in phoenixing and digging out and like building your own shit. Right. But there also comes a point where that use of grit is not the same thing that gets you from stability to whatever that next level is for you, right? For some people, that's making your first 100,000 in the business. For some people, that's getting to 1 million. Like the numbers are arbitrary. But it wasn't until maybe 2019 did I realize that attitude was no longer serving me. Like I'm incredibly proud of what I've created, right? Throughout my adult life, right? I moved to Boston on a wing and a prayer, no job, no apartment, and like just landed there with a suitcase and built a life. House burned down, did it again, right? Like there's pride that can be had in those deadlifts.
Oh, I love those stories. Super
Right?
inspirational when you hear somebody else do the whole, I stepped off the bus in New York and I had my suitcase and $1, and I think that stuff's amazing. I love it all.
It is. But you know what? I'm also 47 now and I have zero interest in the lifestyle that comes with that phoenixing, right?
Yeah.
And I can connect with people in that space because I have lived it. But that doesn't mean that you can't appreciate what the resources do for your lifestyle. And that's not to say I'm going to walk around head to toe in Louis Vuitton, right? And be an asshole. I think it's in connecting the pieces around like, okay, well, if we're purely talking about, how those resources show up for people in their lives and their perception of them, just because you appreciate living that way doesn't mean that has to be your story forever.
Yeah. I think my issue, and it's kind of like I'm working through it as we're just talking right here, is I always do the Robert Frost, right? I choose the road less traveled by. Now, here's the problem is in my mind, I think the road less traveled by is struggling and trying to make it and doing all that. When in reality, the road less traveled by is probably, pricing yourself correctly and, actually earning a good income from it and all of that. Less people do that than struggle, right? Most people price incorrectly and come in low and don't make enough money and their business fails. I think that's probably a vast majority of people who start it. So I think I have to get my thinking right where, you can take the road less traveled by, but that actually isn't the one you're taking. My wife and I talk a lot about earlier in my business, she said, why don't you do like headshots and you need to be offering these things and, a very business minded or business focused kind of thing. And I thought that I'm an artist, I don't do that stuff. I don't want to be the guy who has to do what he has to do what he loves to do. Right. I want to just do what I want and people pay me for it. And it's not working out quite yet, but I'm waiting for that $1 million, $2 million person to just come in and say, here's this, now do whatever you want. But it's the business part that has been killing the creative part for me. And I just know that it's not a reality, that it's like I wrote that reality. So I'm finding my footing again. We're going to, like I said, we're just breathe in, breathe out and
and I think that's, it's not to say that you have only been trying to make it work and not. Like you've actually really put a lot of energy and focus into some pillars of business that have allowed you to create other components, right? Like you have created a 501c3 that serves the teens and tweens in your community and have a board and fundraising and all of this stuff. So it's not to say like, you're just out here like throwing photo shoots and screaming into the void and being like, nobody loves me. Like that's not true. You've also really focused on the creative development side, which, a lot of people come in and they're like, oh, I'm good at this. And their work actually sucks. So it's not like you haven't put focus into things. It's just those pieces are not all in place at once.
Okay. I've always been confident in my work, right? Always. Ever since the very beginning, I didn't show it so much, but I always was like, I feel good about this work. And it was a struggle for me. And I've said this before, but it was a struggle for me to see other people succeeding when, I know this is a jerk thing to say. I get it. When I look at their work and I'm like, I know my work is better than that. Like, I know it is. And I know that they are in, I don't know, maybe not a small town, but let's say a small city, right? And I'm like, I'm in Chicago, for God's sakes. Like I know that there's people here that are spending $10,000 on a purse, right? Like I know that I have the market here. I know that I have the skills. I know I have the work. And I'm like, so then what is it? Right? What's the thing that's not working? And then of course, then you get into all the self-value questioning and all that kind of stuff. But it's interesting. And I'm going to do a little sidebar here. Those people who maybe don't know, Kat was there when I came up with the idea for Tween Esteem Project. I was on a call with like a mentoring call with you and like 3 other people. And I pitched the idea, just kind of saying, I don't know what to do with this idea. I want to do it for free for people, but I can't do it for free, right? How do I do this? This is what I want to do. And you made the suggestion about getting a sponsor, like maybe finding sponsors for this. And I thought that's a great idea, but I don't know what I'm going to do. But like big companies are in Chicago, right? United is in Chicago. McDonald's is in Chicago. Like, I'm like, okay, great. So I talked to my wife about it and she's like, I don't know what to do with that either. Like, we have a friend who's a fundraiser. Why don't you meet with him and just kind of ask how you approach these companies? And I did. And he kind of laughed and shook his head and said, you're making it too hard. Just start a nonprofit, which wasn't even in my brain. I didn't know you could just do that. And then because of that, it all snowballed and then became what it is now. But so I want to thank you for that initial seed that you planted with me, because it kind of started the snowball rolling.
Well, and it's really grown into something pretty incredible. I know that sometimes, especially in new business, whether we're talking about, the nonprofit or, your retail, we want it to move so much faster. We want it to, okay, I put these pieces in place, let's go. Mm-hmm. But it's about the distribution and getting in front of leads, whether we're talking about the $12,000 success story with like work or the success of a nonprofit. It's about like the winner is always the one with the widest lead generation, always.
Right.
And we struggle with that, especially when we're in the comparison game of like, my work is good. It's solid. Like, the experience I give people is not something that just anybody offers, let alone the finished product. And then you spend all of this time like sourcing amazing art products, because when we start talking about the art of it, I was watching a snippet of a talk that Sarah Edmonds did. She said, fine art is not something that can only live on Instagram. Fine art is something that must be printed and proudly shared, because the digital space can't hold it. And I was like, oh, and she's English too. So she's got this beautiful accent and says it so well. And
just sounds smarter when she says it.
Yeah. Sarah's amazing like that. She's just so eloquent. But it's true, so when you start thinking about like the comparison game, and because here's the thing, you have to have a portfolio that you're proud of, not one that you're just like, oh, well, it's good enough. Like one that you're proud of, even if it's at a baseline. It just only has one image of each demographic that you want to shoot. That's a baseline, but it's got to be work that you look at and you're like, yeah, I did that. But from that space, you've got to get in front of the people that you want to serve. And that's where I think most of us really trip up, because we're like, I just want to photograph people. Where are they? They're everywhere.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm comfortable with my work, and I have a really bad competitive, right? Like, I love you to death, but if we're like going against each other in something, I want to win, right?
Oh, yeah.
I want to beat you. I want you to be happy, but I also want you to be happy in second place. Do you know? And it's a problem, and I know it. I know it's a problem, but I'm not mean about it. But it's always that. And so when I see other people doing this stuff, I'm like, oh God, like now I need a $13,000 sale, right? I need to beat them. And by the way, if you're listening to this and you're wondering if I'm talking about you, I'm not. It's somebody else. It's been like this issue of we said earlier, I'm in Chicago. So there's 100 billion photographers here, I believe. But the more I look around, none of them shoot like me. Right. And I'm not saying I'm necessarily better than them, but I'm different. Right. And they can shoot in the same luxury portrait area, but it's not the same kind of work. And so I immediately have something that sets me apart. So I don't have to feel like, what can I do to like make myself different? I'm there already. It's just, and I've talked to a lot of people about it, it's sort of convincing people, or at least showing the right people, that this is what they want. Because it is a little different. It's a little, you described it as dark and moody at the beginning. I don't describe it as that, just because everyone then thinks weddings. I always call it like dark and romantic, right? It's like an interview with a vampire type look, right?
Sure.
Little, whatever, modern Victorian, whatever you'd call it.
Modern Victorian. I could get down with that. Sure.
Yeah. Okay. When you're being a little different, that it's a good thing because it sets you apart, but it also is a more difficult thing because it sets you apart.
Inevitably, like when you do speak to inquiries and they send you their Pinterest boards or their inspiration, and you look at it and you're like, what on my website said anything remotely close to this? And then, you have the decision to make. Well, do I try to comply to that inspiration? Do I take that as inspiration and make it my own? How do we continue this conversation? And then you have to ask yourself, well, is it because I want the work, or is it because I feel connected to this person? And if it's just because you want the work, then guess what? The answer is, I don't think we'd be a good fit. Here are some recommendations, right? And most of us, especially in the space of, we're not quite hitting those goal markers yet, right? Those milestones. It can be tough to say, no, go somewhere else, because we do need the revenue. We're responsible for that revenue.
Yeah. I've had people come to me for birthday photos, with the balloons that are like,
oh yeah,
there's 38 or whatever age they are. And I'm like, well, just so you know, we're probably not the best fit, it's just not, I don't even, you know what? That would be a great challenge. Like, how could I do that but still keep my own thing? Right. And like, who knows? There might be something going on there.
I've already got like my brain has gone down some rabbit holes of like, stabbing and taking out the Mylar and
right.
Oh God.
Right. There's ways to do it, but it's not the ways that they're thinking.
Yeah.
And yes. And so you get those kind of clients, and I was absolutely in that position where I'm like, yeah, but I need the money, and okay, they're going to spend $300 on it or whatever. And I'm like, okay, well, that goes against everything I believe in, but do I do it? And I had been saying, no, I didn't do it, but we're getting to the point now where pretty soon I'm going to have to do that. So, and I don't want to. And so that's where the kind of the reset is happening. Obviously there's some holes in my business plan and stuff that isn't working. Like, I'm not doing everything right. If I was, things wouldn't be where they are, right? So instead of just figuring it out on the job, I'm going to go ahead and, like I said, reset, get a little safety net there, and then I won't be so stressed about it. And I can get it back to what I love, doing it frankly, for people that I love, clients that come in here. Like Annie Leibovitz has that famous quote where she said, when you look at my photos, you can tell I wasn't afraid to fall in love with the person. And I think that is such a cool way to look at it, because you're really, besides Annie Leibovitz being my absolute hero forever and ever, amen. She's really inspiring when it comes to that, just really connecting with your clients, and which I feel like I do. Like we laugh, we're best friends when they leave, and we have a lot of fun, which is interesting because when you look at my work, maybe fun isn't what you think. If you saw the behind the scenes of what an actual shoot looks like, there's a lot of laughing. Whenever I meet people, they're like, I didn't expect you to be you when I saw your work. You know what I mean? But yeah, so it's going to be a great way to really just figure it out again. Now I'm figuring it out, having already gone through it, right? So there's a lot of lessons learned and a lot of things that I'm like, well, if whatever, I get a suggestion to try a certain thing, I can be like, well, I actually did try that. Here's where I failed. I could do that again, but I can't do it the same way, right? Like if you just keep doing it over and over again, I've done that where I just run a Facebook ad. It doesn't work. I'm like, that's weird. I'll run it again. And then it's like, well, it didn't work. You didn't change anything.
Still not working.
Right. Exactly. I'm like, wait a second. Why isn't this working? So it's, I don't know. I'm excited moving forward to see where I can take this, because I know it's viable. I know even people in Chicago that are doing it, very successfully. And I know if they're doing it, then I know I can do it, and I want to do it better. I don't know. It's gonna be an interesting little journey in the next probably year or so.
Yeah. Well, and here's the other piece. Having that safety net, even though it will cost you time and energy, right, to perform for this other business, gives you the opportunity to disconnect from the desperation of, oh my God, I have to make that $12,000 sale, right? Or I have to make that $1,000 sale, right? And then you're able to sort of take a bird's eye view of your processes across the board, like your workflows, your systems, your sales process, your client experience, and look at it objectively instead of through the lens of, oh my God, we're all going to die.
Yeah, and the nice thing is too, the work, when I'm going back into the workforce, it's going to be doing photography and videography. So it's still in the, it's not like all of a sudden I'm going to be an accountant, right? It's keeping it in this creative field where I'll be learning new things, of course, and just kind of honing my chops a bit. So then maybe video becomes more a part of this business, or however I decide to move it forward. So it's not, I have a lot of problems with selling out, right? It's like I don't know what it is, the old punk kid in me or something. Yeah. I don't know what it is, but I've got a real issue with it. And
so this, how do you feel about Nirvana?
Oh boy,
it's going somewhere, I promise.
Okay, it's not going to get me fans, but I think Nirvana was overrated.
But as an archetype of being anti corporate America, I watched this interview with Chris Cornell, and somebody brought up something about Kurt Cobain because, like your opinion was actually the opinion of a lot of people in that era. Kurt Cobain and Chris Cornell, they were both kind of giants. Chris Cornell being sort of the godfather of grunge. This is my Gen X coming out, guys. You can tell I'm 47 now. And then, Kurt Cobain being part of the 27 Club and all of this. And on the cover of Rolling Stone, like, corporations suck or something. I forget the exact verbiage. But you know what? He still took the shoot. He still took the cover. Like it was there. And I used to have a big issue with like selling out. And, I look at it as long as my integrity's in place, then it's not selling out, it's cashing in. But the second that I sacrifice my integrity for anything, whether we're talking about a job, my business, blah, 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 then that's selling out. And then that is what makes it disingenuous.
I agree with that. But I have a dueling thing, right? I'm against selling out, but I also have a hardcore need for validation, right? So it's like, okay, I want the more people to like what I do, which in my eyes is like selling out, but I also want the cool kids to like me.
Sure.
Right. I also want the kids who are like, I don't do that, whatever. But that guy's cool because he doesn't do that either. Right. And whatever. It's an issue. My therapist would love it. But it's I run into that problem of trying to be, authentic, to who I am. But also like, I got to appeal to a lot of people. I go to Chamber of Commerce events, for instance. Right. Do I love that? Absolutely not. Do I want to talk to a real estate agent for 15 minutes about whatever? No, I want to talk to people who are like me. I want to talk music all the time. I want to like whatever. I have to try and separate myself from what I think is cool and what I think would be amazing to only do, and realize that that's not, there's a very, very little amount of people that get to do only what they love to do and be successful at it, and then that's what I'm sort of realizing. Because I'm not going to listen. I'm never going to love headshots. No, I'm just never going to do it. I'm never going to love it. I mean, I'll offer headshots, but it's never going to be like, I got 8 headshots today. Yes, this is going to be like, I'm going to feel so great today. No, it's going to be like production work, right? It's just going to kind of do whatever.
Right. But I think if you reframe how the approach is, right, it's not like I'm going to the chamber events to offer headshots. Like you can certainly make them aware if that's something that you want to do. I've got one day a month that's reserved for this thing. But really like lean into the authenticity of the fine artwork that you create. And this is what I do. This is why I'm here, because it's not about that realtor saying, I need a new headshot. It's about that realtor realizing like that their family needs this experience, that their daughter needs to walk through this space, that they need to walk through this space outside of the business side of it, right? Guys, headshots are a gateway drug because people can always justify an expense for their business before they can justify it for themselves. But when you start showing up with the opportunity for them to step into that space for themselves with the integrity and the love of what you do and describing that experience for them, they may not approach you at that event. They may not want to discuss it there, but that doesn't mean that they won't approach you.
Yeah, I mean the issue is, as the kids say, my toxic trait is that I feel like I can change the game in the sense that, like, for instance, I was offering senior photos for a little while. I guess I still am. In my area, everyone wants outside in a field, right? That's leaning against the building in downtown Chicago. And I thought,
like an urban setting.
Right, exactly. The reason they want that is because they've never seen anything else, right? All their friends have that. And so I started this whole campaign of, your child's not like anyone else's child, so why have photos like anyone else's? And I was like doing all this like artistic studio stuff. And I got a lot of feedback that basically said this doesn't work for seniors. And they do want their photos to look like all their friends. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to change the game, right? And instead of just like, well, maybe it's not ready to be changed. And so that was kind of a failed experiment where I'm like, yeah, I'm still offering them, but I'm not pushing them as hard as I was before, because what I found is that it's like maybe it's either not ready to be changed or not willing to be changed, or I'm not the guy to change it. It's something that's going on.
Well, here's the thing. You're not trying to change the narrative for senior photography across the world. You're looking for 20 seniors in the graduating class across Chicago of what? 40,000 seniors? Maybe that's a little, that might be a little bit of an exaggeration, but like, I don't need to change the industry here. I want the people that want this. Because you don't need the whole city of Chicago.
Right.
Right. If you could take a total, like with a full-time job, maybe 30 sessions all year, like that's 30 people.
Yeah, you're right, Kat. You're right. Jeez. Okay. Put me on public blast like that. I don't makes sense.
You mean it. Right. But see, that's where the ripple effect comes from. And like that, I think, is really what's going to propel you. Like when we have this conversation again, I would say probably in like 18 to 24 months, it's going to be about how this job was a really great opportunity for you to get comfortable, because the pillars that you have been putting in place, like we haven't even talked about your awards yet. And oh my God, right? Like the nonprofit, and all of not just creative exploration, but like that validation through awards, 7 Ways to Sunday, through Icon Awards and PPA, and like all of these places. And then getting those people in the Chicago area that do appreciate what you do and the impact that you're making for the kids, through Tween Esteem. And like all of that is going to bubble up, and you'll be able to leverage it in a big way to get way more eyes, like scaled eyes on your work. And that's really when that will start to, like, you'll see it in front of you and be like, holy shit, it's happening. It's happening. It's happening. I can feel it coming. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. It's working.
Well, I hope so. I'm excited for it too. I to get off on the awards thing a little bit. I can't recommend more that people enter these just competitions, whatever. There's free ones. There's ones that you pay for, whatever. It doesn't really matter. To me, none of the winning one award over a different award doesn't do anything for me. Like I don't consider certain awards better than other awards, right? Obviously first place is better than second place, but I just need that validation, whether it's from my local PPA, which, by the way, I love. If you guys have a PPA in your area, which most have one somewhere close, definitely join them. And because they have competitions as well, and it's on obviously a much more local based, and that's what really kind of kickstarted my awards season, which was I won a bunch of awards through them, and it was a surprise, which was even better. And sometimes you know that you're going to win an award, and I did not know. And I was at an event, and my name just kept getting called, and it was wild. And I got to take home a trophy that has been passed around PPA in Chicago since 1971. So I keep this
Ooh.
trophy until next year's awards ceremony, and then either I win it again and I keep it, or I hand it off to the next person. And it has all our names. It's like the Stanley Cup, right? It has all our names on it from
Word.
all over the years. And it's just such a cool thing that, again, I didn't even know about. I just showed up and got it. And yeah, it
I
was
just
weird.
showed up and won, no big deal.
Well, kind of. I thought so because it was my first year joining this group. I won Rookie of the Year, and I kind of had an idea that I was going to win Rookie of the Year. So that's why, because they were kind of telling me, you really should go to this dinner. You really should show up. And I'm like, okay, so it's probably because I'm winning the Rookie of the Year award. And I ended up winning an award in like every single thing that they offered. And
Awesome.
that was weird. Let me tell you, because I love validation, but I don't love all eyes on me. So it's a little weird. Like I want you to whisper in my ear that I won the award and like hand it to me across the table and then move on. So that was weird. But yeah, I highly suggest just doing that because, there's been a lot of feedback from in the photography realm of when you ask for critiques, right? And each competition will have their own set of judges that give critiques. And I've found it to be priceless, just in the sense of knowing which directions that I can go. We talk about how my work's dark. I've actually lightened it because for a while it was getting a little too dark. And I don't mean
Mm,
dark in the sense of like theming and stuff, but more in the sense of actually dark image
yeah.
and like it would print too dark and things like that. So I've actually kind of brought it up a little bit because I agree with earlier what you were saying, how they should be printed. And what I found is when you see my work on your computer screen, it's backlit. So it's like nice and a good color range. But as soon as you print it, it's like black and you get
Mhm.
little hints of skin somewhere. So I learned that kind of stuff through competitions. And even if you don't care, if you don't have the competitive spirit like I do, and you want to win and want to win and want to win, it's still good to get kind of, I don't know, like a marker of where you are. If
Mhm.
you enter this year and you get 60s, whatever, that's fine. It's not a big deal. And then you enter next year and you get 70s. Well, look at that, right? It's not your friends telling you your work's awesome,
Right.
which only goes so far. I love hearing it, but
Like when the Portrait Masters first introduced their awards and accreditation program, I was actually quite reticent. I was very focused on the responsibility for revenue and getting clients and all of the things. And I was like, my clients don't care about awards. Like awards don't pay me. This is where I'm focused. The first round, I didn't enter anything. And the second round, I entered like 6 pieces, and I think 5 of them were black and white. I was really doing my first season of Come As You Are, and it was like probably the most exciting thing that I'd been shooting creatively because it was all heart based. But as I started entering more of them, then I started getting obsessed because now I was actively scheduling creative work that was solely based on what it is that I wanted to explore and create. My work started growing, like the tech side, right? My ability for storytelling like increased exponentially because of my focus on those awards and accreditation. And then all of a sudden, my clients did start to care because I would start incorporating those creative concepts into my client work and just introduce it in a session and actually like, okay, we're going to do this now. I was inspired by your story about this and created this, blah, 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 blah. And they're always like, oh, really? Me? Oh my gosh. And that snowballed. And then they started finding status in shooting with me because I was incorporating those creative elements into whatever session they were booking me for. Then people, friends, and as my friend Sarai says, and frenemies start calling to book sessions with you because they know that creative element is there and they're also getting their needs met.
Yeah.
Right. Whether that's family or boudoir or, insert holiday here. And that really is where I found a lot of growth in my work, from being just like, okay, I'm a good photographer. All right, fine. Nothing special, to like, wow, this is exciting. Like the variety that I can create and the toolkit that I have in that space, like, is all because of that awards work. So if you can ever attend live judging, get feedback on your submissions, like always spend the extra, a few dollars or whatever to get that feedback, because that critique is invaluable, even if you're just like, what? I got judging critique back recently, and I won't say from, which program, but I submitted a boudoir piece, and I do a lot of draping in my set design, and it's with like a beige drape on the left-hand side of the frame, and the judge sent me the feedback, was like, and what are these? Are these trees? And I was like, and trees, what? So you have to appreciate, like, eye of the beholder, but.
Right. Yeah. And I think what people need to know, especially if you haven't really entered a competition either, is that the winning images that you see are very rarely client images. Like most people, they are sometimes, but for the most part, people like build sets or create wardrobe, have an idea, they plan it out, and it's specifically shot for award season, basically. But what's cool about that is, like Kat said, you can take some of the elements that you've learned by building whatever, or you might try draping for the first time, doing an awards session, and then you're like, well, actually this looks beautiful, I'm going to kind of pull that and bring it into my client sessions a little bit, and they see that original image when you share it, of course, across all your stuff, and they're like, oh, so I can have that, and you're like, well, you can have, like, we'll get you there, right? You'll be able to give them little pieces of this super fine art creative work that you don't have to spend as much time as you would have on the awards image. But I know that kind of bummed me out the first time. Is I submitted client work, and I'm like, okay, well, it's it was for TPM, and it was getting like bronze or bronze with distinction or whatever. And by the way, bronze kills me. Bronze says third place to me. I know it's not. I know that's not what it is, but that's where my mind is. And I remember seeing the winning images, and I'm like, how do they get these clients? How do they get a client that wants to do what that image is? And, obviously then just being in the industry and learning more and more, you realize that they don't. That's not what that is. They make a model call and they create that image on their own. And that opened my eyes a lot to that. So it's not my day-to-day work.
I was judging on a panel for what's now the Icon Awards. It's Jerry and Melissa Guiones operate my Icon Awards. And I was judging on a panel for them at WPPI. I can't remember if it was 21 or 22, but I was in the portrait category. There are 6 judges total in the room, but there's typically 4 on a panel at a time. And, you're doing live print judging. And this image came up, and the woman who photographed the image actually ended up winning like the all and everything. And it was client work. And originally, I think we were at like a score of 98 or 99, and there was one judge holding out for 100. And so it turned into this big debate and all of this stuff. And it was really incredible because it was, after the fact, we didn't know it was client work at the time, but it was of this woman surviving, chemotherapy. And she was holding her hair in her hands and just kind of weeping. And the color on it was just, it was a powerful image. Everybody in the room was like holding on to their seats, literally, like you hear the saying, like, hold on to your butts. Like that was everybody. And this judge fought for it to be 100, and we went back and forth and like all of the things. And you know what? Unanimous, because 100 has to be unanimous. When it came back that unanimously everybody came in at 100, you just heard this woman like in the back of the room, and we were like, holy shit, she's here. And it was such a powerful, powerful, powerful moment. I will never forget it.
So that's a great point, is when you do PPA stuff, and I don't know if it's everywhere locally, but our local one, they do it online, so you can watch, and they do the same thing. There's 4 judges. I think maybe there's 5 judges, and they all submit their scores, and then they kind of argue about it if they want, or they just move on, right? And it's amazing and a little heartbreaking. But when you see an image come up, I've had images come up and they're like, I don't know, 80, 80, 80, 80, 95. And you're like, wow, that one judge really loves whatever I just did. And then they fight. And of course, that judge comes down because they just got excited about it. And it's cool when you have that one person fighting for you, right? Mm-hmm. And even if it's just for a couple points or whatever, it's such
to get you into that next level.
Yeah. Yeah. It's such a good feeling.
That's awesome. Well, Josh, thank you so much for being with me today. This has been such a terrific conversation, and I really appreciate you being so open and transparent about, the kind of pitfalls and ebbs and flows of business, but you really have created something really incredible. And when that unfolds for you, because it will, like, it's going to be really terrific to watch you shine and get all that attention. But also, like, I know it's going to feel pretty intense, but really heartwarming for you too.
Well, thank you so much. I'm an open book. If anyone wants to ask me anything about anything, I don't care. Just know that you're not alone. If you're struggling in your business or whatever, there's plenty of us out here doing the same thing, regardless of what social media tells you.
Oh, absolutely. In the US, there are 250,000 photography businesses across all genres, like wedding, events, portrait, any of it. And only 8% of them are doing more than 100K in revenue a year. And that's gross revenue. So guys, you aren't alone. And like Josh said, he's an open book. You're welcome to, book a call with me. Like, there is a path, and it's not always linear, but there is a way to make things work. And it's about you betting on yourself to be able to do it. And I love, Josh, that you are.
Fingers crossed.